The wind howled over the jagged cliffs, carrying the scent of salt and shadow. The sun had long vanished behind the jagged peaks, leaving only the silver glow of the twin moons to light the kingdom. Below the cliff, the crowd murmured nervously, their voices a mixture of fear and excitement. They had gathered to witness the punishment of a young Omega, one who carried the curse of being wolfless. Lyra stood at the edge of the cliff, her hands trembling slightly, though her chin remained high. Her brown hair whipped around her face, tangled by the biting wind. And her gray eyes, usually soft and thoughtful, now burned with defiance. The villagers called her cursed, a shame to her family. And the royal court had declared her sentence: death at sunset. She glanced down at the rocks far below. The fall alone would end her life swiftly, but not her suffering. The accusation of being wolfless was heavier than any blade. In this kingdom, Omega women without a wolf were considered broken. No matter how strong, how kind, or how clever, they were shunned, hunted, and eventually destroyed. Lyra's heart pounded, not with fear, but with a strange, stubborn hope. She remembered the days when she had run through the forests, listening to the wolves' call, hoping to hear her own. She had waited for a wolf to claim her, to recognize her as its mate. Yet, for all her life, no wolf had come. The word, wolfless, had clung to her like a shadow she could never shake. "Step forward," called the executioner, a tall man with a mask of iron, his voice cold and echoing. "The kingdom demands justice." Lyra's knees ached, but she refused to kneel. Her gaze swept the crowd. Faces stared, some curious, some cruel. She saw her parents, pale and broken, pretending not to watch. And somewhere in the shadows, she saw the alpha of the kingdom, Kael, the ruler of all the wolves in the kingdom, the strongest alpha the lands had known in a century. Tales of his power were whispered even in the darkest taverns. His wolf, a massive silver creature with eyes like molten silver, never failed to recognize a mate, or so the legends said. Kael himself had never taken a mate. None had survived his trials. Lyra's heart skipped. Even standing here, facing death, a part of her trembled at the thought of him. But it was not fear, it was a strange, inexplicable pull, like the wind calling to the cliff, like the moon calling to the tide. Kael stepped forward, his boots crunching against the jagged stones. His presence silenced the murmurs instantly. The wind seemed to bow around him, as though the world itself recognized his authority. His eyes, dark and sharp, scanned Lyra. For a moment, the world narrowed down to two figures, the condemned Omega and the Alpha of the kingdom. "She is wolfless," the head judge said, stepping forward. His voice was firm, but it carried a hint of unease as he looked at Kael. "The law is clear. Without a wolf, she cannot serve as an Omega. She is a danger to the pack and the kingdom. The sentence is death." Kael did not speak at first. His wolf prowled beside him, ears alert, nose twitching. It growled softly, not a warning, not a threat, but something deep, primal. It studied Lyra as if it could see into her soul. Lyra's breath caught. The wolf's eyes, silver and glowing faintly in the moonlight, fixed on her. She felt a tremor run through her body. It was as if the wolf had recognized her, an impossible thought. Could it be? The legends said, an alpha's wolf never failed to sense its mate. The judge raised a hand, preparing to continue, but Kael stepped forward, his voice cutting through the wind. "Wait," he said. Every word seemed to echo against the cliffs. "This Omega? She is not like the others." The crowd gasped. Whispers filled the air. Some called it blasphemy. Others, curiosity. Lyra felt her heart leap. Kael's wolf let out a low, melodic howl. It was not the howl of a beast, but something deeper, something almost human in its sound. The howl reverberated through Lyra's chest, stirring memories she had never known. A voice she had heard in dreams, a presence she had always felt, but never seen. The judge scowled. Alpha Kale, your interference is unacceptable. She is wolfless. The law cannot be broken. Kale's eyes narrowed, but his gaze never left Lyra. Lyra's knees nearly gave way. The wind whipped around her, and for a moment, the world seemed suspended in silence. She felt the wolf step closer, its massive head lowering until its muzzle was near her hand. Its silver eyes searched hers, as though confirming what her heart already dared to believe. You recognize me?" she whispered, barely audible over the wind. The wolf nuzzled her gently, a simple gesture that carried the weight of 1,000 words. The judge shouted, trying to regain control. "This is an abomination! Move her to the pit!" Kale's hand shot out, gripping the judge by the collar and lifting him effortlessly. "No," he said. His voice was steel and fire. "She will not die. Not tonight. Not by your hands." The crowd gasped again, but now in awe and fear. Some muttered that the Alpha had gone mad. Others whispered that a miracle had occurred. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. She had never felt truly safe, not in her life. But standing here, with Kale's wolf and Kale himself protecting her, she felt a strange warmth, a hope she had never dared to feel. Who is she?" asked a noblewoman in the crowd, her voice trembling. Why would the Alpha protect a wolfless Omega? Kale's wolf stepped forward fully, brushing against Lyra's legs. "Because she is mine," Kale said, his words both shocking and final. "Because the wolf has chosen her. Because destiny is not bound by law or fear." Lyra's chest swelled. The word Luna had never been spoken to her, yet it resonated in her soul. She did not know if she was ready for it. She did not know if she deserved it. But the recognition of the wolf of something greater than the court, greater than the kingdom itself, had awakened something within her. The judge, pale and trembling, could only retreat, realizing his authority was meaningless before the Alpha's command and the wolf's recognition. The villagers slowly dispersed, leaving only Kale, his wolf, and Lyra at the cliff's edge. Kyle did not speak immediately. He watched Lyra with an intensity that made her stomach tighten. The wind seemed to still itself, as if the world were holding its breath. "You are wolfless," Kyle finally said, his voice low. Lyra swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. I think so." "It means your life is no longer yours alone," Kale said. "It means the bond between us is ancient, powerful, and dangerous. It means your fate is now tied to the pack and to me. Are you ready for that?" Lyra's heart raced. Fear mixed with hope, and an impossible courage rose within her. I want to try," she said. Kyle nodded, though his eyes held a shadow of worry. "Good. Then we begin at once. The bond must be strengthened, or the darkness that watches will consume more than just you." Lyra felt the wolf nudge her again. Its warmth, its presence, was a promise and a challenge. She knew the path ahead would not be easy. The kingdom, the pack, even Kale himself carried burdens she could barely imagine. And she carried her own fear. Could she truly be the Luna of this Alpha? Could she survive the trials that awaited her? The wind howled louder now, carrying a strange scent. Lyra's stomach tightened. Somewhere in the shadows, eyes watched, and a presence she could not yet name stirred. The cliff, the wolf, Kyle, they were her sanctuary. But the darkness was patient, waiting for the moment to strike. Kyle stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Come," he said. "You have been sentenced to death. But tonight, you begin a life that will either save this kingdom or destroy it." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of destiny settle on her shoulders. She looked at Kael, at the wolf, at the night sky shimmering with silver moons. She felt fear, yes, but also a strange exhilaration. She was condemned, yes, but for the first time in her life, she felt chosen. And in the shadows, something ancient and dark stirred, unseen but aware, waiting for the bond to be tested. Lyra did not look back. She stepped forward, leaving the cliff of death behind her, toward a future she could not yet understand, but one she would face with courage. The fortress of the Alpha rose like a jagged crown above the cliffs, bathed in the pale silver glow of the twin moons. Its stone walls were cold and gray, carved from the mountains themselves, and whispers of past battles lingered in every corridor. Lyra had never seen a place so silent and alive at the same time. Shadows moved as though they had a life of their own, and the air was thick with the scent of pine, smoke, and something wild, something she instinctively recognized as wolf. Kael led her inside, his cloak brushing the floor. The wolf followed silently, massive paws making no sound on the stone. Lyra's heart beat faster with every step. This fortress, this Alpha, this wolf, it all felt like stepping into a world she had always dreamed of, yet never believed could exist. "You will stay here," Kael said, his voice low but commanding. "Until we understand the bond fully, you are under my protection. No one may harm you." Lyra swallowed, unsure if she should feel relief or fear. To be under the Alpha's protection meant life, but also scrutiny. Every step she took, every breath, would now be watched. The wolf, sensing her hesitation, pressed close to her side. Its warmth calmed her in a way nothing else had. She knelt, brushing her hand over its thick, silver fur. The wolf nuzzled her in return, low and rumbling, and for the first time in her life, Lyra felt the strange sense of belonging she had always yearned for. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered to the wolf. Its ears twitched, and it rested its head against her shoulder. "We're connected. Somehow, we're meant to be together." Kael watched silently from the doorway, his dark eyes unreadable. There was something in his gaze, something that made her skin prickle. Authority? Curiosity? Or perhaps something deeper? "You may feel it," Kael said finally, "but the bond is not yet complete. You must awaken it. Only then will you be safe, and only then will your power fully manifest." Lyra tilted her head. "Awaken it? How?" Kael's expression hardened. "Through trust, through courage, and through the trials that will come. You must face the darkness inside yourself, and the darkness outside." Lyra's stomach twisted. She had survived fear and death before, but Kael spoke as though the challenges ahead would be unlike anything she had imagined, and she could sense it, the shadows lurking just beyond the fortress walls, watching, waiting. The wolf growled softly, as if confirming Kael's words. It was no longer just a companion. It was a guide, a protector, and something more. Lyra felt a surge of energy when she touched its fur. It hummed beneath her hand, like a living heartbeat, connecting her to something ancient, wild, and powerful. The first night in the fortress was quiet but uneasy. Lyra lay on a simple cot in a small chamber, listening to the wolf's breathing and the wind moaning through the stone. Her mind raced with questions and fears, but also an unfamiliar excitement. What did it mean to be chosen? To be a Luna? And what did the darkness that Kael spoke of truly hold? The next morning, Kael summoned her to the training yard. The wolves of the pack moved around the area, their eyes sharp, their bodies tense. Some howled at the rising sun, others prowled silently. Lyra felt a pang of both fear and longing. She had dreamed of wolves all her life, but now they were real, alive, and so powerful. "You must learn to communicate," Kael said. "Not just with me, not just with the wolf, but with all the pack. The bond will grow stronger if you understand them." Lyra nodded, trying to steady her trembling hands. Kale handed her a small pendant, carved from silver and shaped like a crescent moon. This will help you connect. Close your eyes, feel the wolf, and let your mind reach out. Lyra did as he instructed. At first, she felt only confusion and fear, a chaotic swirl of emotions she could not control. But slowly, a warmth began to spread from her heart, flowing outward, connecting to the wolf beside her. Its eyes softened, its breathing slowed, and it leaned into her touch. She gasped, I can feel it." Kale stepped closer, his presence a steadying weight. "Good. That is the first step. You are stronger than you know, Lyra. But the true test is not here. In safety. It will come soon." That night, Lyra dreamed of fire and shadow. She saw herself standing in a forest on fire, wolves circling her, eyes glowing like embers. A dark figure moved among them, its form shifting, its presence chilling. Lyra felt fear rise. But the wolf's voice, a sound only she could hear, told her to be brave, to trust, to rise. When she awoke, the dream lingered like smoke in her mind. Kale was already waiting. "You dreamed," he said simply. "Yes," Lyra admitted. "A dark figure. I felt like it was waiting for me." Kale's expression was grave. "It is. That shadow has been watching for centuries. It seeks to destroy the bond before it can fully awaken. If it succeeds, not only you, but the entire pack, the kingdom, itself, will suffer." Lyra swallowed hard. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but she forced herself to stand taller. "Then, I will not let it win." Kale's gaze softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. "Good. Courage is essential. But you must also learn patience, cunning, and understanding. The darkness will test all of that, and more." Over the next days, Kyle trained her not in combat, but in awareness, focus, and connection. They walked through the fortress together, the wolf always by her side. She learned to feel its thoughts, its intentions, its moods. She began to anticipate its movements, to sense danger before it appeared. Kyle observed silently, correcting her when necessary, guiding her with a mixture of firmness and quiet encouragement. There were moments when their hands brushed accidentally, and the air seemed to thrum with unspoken energy. Lyra felt it, a pull she could not name. And though it frightened her, it also made her heart race. One evening, Kale led her to the cliff overlooking the kingdom. The twin moons hung low, casting silver light over the valleys and forests. "Look," he said. "The kingdom is alive, but so is the darkness that threatens it. You must be ready to face it. Are you?" Lyra nodded. Kale's wolf stepped forward, nudging Lyra gently. "Then, let the bond strengthen," Kale said. "Feel it. Let it guide you. You are no longer alone, Lyra. Never alone again." She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind and heart. The wolf's presence enveloped her, warm and steady, like a river flowing through her veins. She felt the pulse of the pack, the strength of Kale, and an unbreakable thread connecting them all. For a moment, the world seemed still. Then, far in the distance, a shadow moved among the forests below. Lyra's heart leapt. She could feel it not through sight, but through instinct. Through the wolf. Through the bond. The darkness was approaching. Kale's hand rested on her shoulder. "It begins," he said. "The trial will come sooner than we expected. You must trust the bond, and trust yourself." Lyra nodded, feeling the wolf press closer, its warmth a shield against the chill that rose from the valley below. Fear was there, yes, but so was courage, determination, and something deeper, something powerful, something destined. The shadow in the forest stirred, eyes glowing faintly like embers. It moved with a purpose, patient, and relentless. Lyra's breath caught. The darkness that Kael had warned her of was real, and it had sensed the awakening of the bond. She looked at Kael. "We can face it?" Kael's dark eyes softened for a moment. "Together," he said. And in that moment, Lyra felt a surge of hope. The darkness could wait. For now, she had the Alpha, the Wolf, and a strength she had never known. But even as they stood together on the cliff, the shadow in the distance moved closer, silent and patient. It waited for the perfect moment to strike, and the bond that Lyra and Kael shared would be tested in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The twin moons hung high, bathing the fortress in silver light. Lyra, the Wolfless Omega, now recognized as the Luna, took a deep breath. The trials were coming. The darkness was watching. But for the first time in her life, she was not afraid. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant cries of wolves and the whisper of the wind against the fortress walls. Lyra stood at the cliff's edge once more, her hands resting lightly on the massive silver fur of the Alpha's wolf. Its presence was steady, a pulse of life and power that ran through her own veins. Kael stood beside her, dark eyes scanning the valley below, alert for any sign of the shadow that had been stirring for days. Lyra could feel it now, not just fear, but anticipation. The bond between her and the wolf had grown stronger with every hour, every moment of trust and connection. She could sense Kael's thoughts more clearly, his moods, his intentions. And for the first time, she truly understood the weight of being a Luna, not just a companion, but a force that could shape destiny itself. The shadow moved closer. Lyra felt it in her chest, in her bones, a presence cold and patient, watching for the perfect moment to strike. The stories Kael had told, the warnings, the visions, they were all real. The darkness was alive, ancient, and relentless. "You feel it," Kael said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "It knows you are ready. It knows the bond is forming, and it fears what you can become." Lyra nodded, swallowing hard. "Then we will not let it win." Kael placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying, grounding her. "No," he said. "Together, we are stronger than it. Remember that. Trust the wolf. Trust yourself. Trust me." The wolf growled softly, nudging Lyra forward. Its silver eyes glowed brighter in the moonlight, as if igniting a fire within her. Lyra felt courage swell in her chest. She had faced death once, and she had survived. Now, she would face the darkness itself. From the forest below, the shadow began to rise, a dark form shifting like smoke, eyes glowing faintly like embers. It moved with unnatural speed, circling the cliff and watching, testing. Lyra's heart beat faster. But the fear that had once paralyzed her was gone. She could feel the wolf's heartbeat within her own, steady, strong, and full of purpose. Kael stepped forward. "It begins," he said. "Hold your ground, Luna." Lyra took a deep breath, letting the silver glow of the moons wash over her. She reached out with her mind, touching the wolf's thoughts, feeling the pack around them, connecting to the ancient rhythm of the land itself. Energy surged through her, warm and vibrant, like sunlight flowing through her veins. The darkness may have been patient, but it had underestimated the bond that had formed here. The shadow struck. It leapt from the trees, faster than Lyra could see, a swirling mass of cold and malice aimed straight at her. Instinctively, the wolf leapt in front, baring its teeth, growling like thunder. Lyra felt the surge of its power and pushed forward, placing her hands on the wolf's head. A pulse of energy shot through her, connecting her to the Alpha and to the pack. "Focus," Kael shouted. "Trust the bond." Lyra closed her eyes, letting go of fear. She reached with her heart, with her mind, and the wolf's presence enveloped her like a shield. The shadow hit, and for a moment, The air itself seemed to freeze. But the bond held. Silver light radiated from Lyra, flowing outward in a wave that pushed back the darkness. The shadow hissed, recoiling from the light, and a sound like screaming wind echoed through the valley. Lyra opened her eyes, glowing faintly with power. The shadow faltered, its form flickering like smoke in a breeze. She felt it now not as a threat, but as something she could confront, something she could face and change. The bond gave her clarity, courage, and strength beyond what she had ever imagined. "You can do it," Kale said softly, moving to stand beside her. Together. Lyra lifted her chin. "I am ready." Lyra. "I am ready." Lyra. The shadow roared, swirling faster, trying to strike again. But Lyra stepped forward, channeling every ounce of energy she had into the bond. She spoke aloud, her voice clear, steady, and commanding. "Leave this land. You have no hold here." The shadow hesitated, its glowing eyes flickering. The wolf growled again, and Kale's presence strengthened her words. Lyra felt the energy between her and the wolf peak, a tide of silver light and power that wrapped around them both. The shadow shrieked, twisting, shrinking, and then shattered into the wind like smoke scattered by a storm. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. The wolf pressed against her, warmth and loyalty flowing into her like a river. Kael knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said, pride and awe in his voice. "You faced the darkness and held the bond." Lyra looked up at him, her gray eyes shining. "I couldn't have done it alone." Kael's lips curved into a small, rare smile. "You never will. That is what makes us strong. That is what makes you my Luna." The wolf nuzzled Lyra gently, its presence a quiet, steadfast promise. Lyra had survived death once, survived fear, and now she had survived darkness. And through it all, she had not been alone. She had Kael, the wolf, and a connection deeper than anything she could have imagined. The wind stirred once more, carrying the scent of pine and stone, of life and possibility. The valley below lay peaceful, the pack gathering in the moonlight, howls echoing in celebration or acknowledgement. Lyra rose to her feet, brushing her hands over the wolf's silver fur. "I feel different," she said softly. "Like I can do anything." Kael studied her, his dark eyes softening. "The bond will continue to grow," he said. "But power is not just strength. It is trust, patience, and heart. You have proven yourself, but the true path is only beginning." Lyra looked out at the mountains, the forests, and the moonlit rivers below. She felt the weight of destiny on her shoulders, but it no longer terrified her. She was no longer the wolfless Omega. She was Luna, chosen, recognized, and empowered. And for the first time, she felt whole. Kael stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers. The gesture was simple, yet it carried meaning far deeper than words. Lyra's pulse quickened. In that touch, she felt not just the bond of wolf and Omega, but something stronger, the bond of hearts, the unspoken understanding that they were now connected in every way possible. "You are my Luna," Kael said, his voice low but firm, "and I will protect you, guide you, and stand by you always." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes, not of fear or sorrow, but of relief and joy. "And I will stand by you too," she whispered. "Always." The wolf nudged her again, pressing close, as if confirming the promise. Lyra wrapped her arms around its neck, feeling its steady heartbeat. In that moment, all the fear, all the loneliness of her past, dissolved. She was no longer condemned. She was no longer alone. The fortress, the mountains, the silver light of the moons, they all seemed to pulse with new life. The darkness that had threatened them had been defeated, but not destroyed. Lyra knew the trials would come again. That danger would always lurk in the shadows. But she also knew she was ready. And she was not alone. Kale's wolf lifted its head and howled, a long, melodic sound that echoed across the cliffs and forests. The pack joined in, a chorus of silver and shadow, of power and loyalty. Lyra felt herself at the center of it all, a heart beating with courage and destiny. Kale's hand brushed her hair, and she looked up at him, their eyes meeting in a moment of unspoken understanding. She felt the connection not just with the wolf, but with him, with the pack, and with herself. She had faced death, fear, and darkness and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the life that lay ahead. The twin moons shone brighter now, casting silver light over the kingdom. Lyra, the Luna, stood with Kale, the Alpha, and the wolf that had recognized her long before anyone else. Together, they were stronger than any shadow, any curse, any threat. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the mountains and forests, the winds whispered a promise. The darkness may return, but so will the bond, stronger than ever, unbroken, eternal. Lyra smiled, feeling the strength of the bond pulse through her. "We are ready," she said softly. "No matter what comes next. Always. We can. We can." Kale nodded, his hand resting gently on hers. The wolf pressed between them, a living bridge of trust, power, and destiny. And for the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly at home.